So good evening and welcome to Clarksville Highway on Wednesday night. We are looking at the Passover the next couple of weeks. Tablecloth was on my chair. I was messed up there. Our special guest tonight is Reggie Claude. So looking forward to asking Reggie some questions kind of later when we get into the interview part of the process. Oh, I meant to look to see who our next week guest is. Do you remember who our next week guest is?
I don't think there's anybody signed up yet.
Oh yeah, next week is next week is Shaw Fulton. So next week Shaw Fulton will be our guest. So
Because when I signed it, there wasn't nobody on next week.
no, you were the first one to sign up because you know you're.
No, I
you
wasn't
were,
the first one to sign.
You weren't the first one to sign up.
No,
No. Okay.
I
Well.
was the fourth one to sign up.
All right. Well, Shaw Fulton is on for next week, so looking forward to that. Be able to talk to Shaw, get some insight from him next week.
See, I took this one because it was a surprise. Nobody knew it.
Right. Nobody. Yes. Well, that's true. Nobody knew who our guest would be tonight. So thanks for tuning in. I am monitoring the Facebook feed for Gospel Chariot. Jeff is monitoring the one for the church website, the church
Mine says
Facebook
it's-
page.
Mine says it's offline, but maybe just my computer.
Okay. So Jeff may not be monitoring that. And then I'm also looking at YouTube comments, but YouTube comments are a little harder to see. But if you're out there, say something so I'll know if I get a response from that. So tonight we're talking about Passover.
We're on.
And last week we talked about, what did we talk about last week, Jeff? We talked about leaven, right? And no leaven on Passover. So we discussed that a little bit. So tonight we're supposed to talk about the Passover lamb. And if you need to read this in the text, Exodus chapter 12 is where you find the first instructions about the Passover. You also find them in a couple of other spots. Thought I wrote them down somewhere, but Deuteronomy 16, I think it's Numbers 8, Numbers 9, also has some instructions about the Passover. I didn't write that on my notes, so you'll have to look it up in your Bible. But I'm pretty sure that's right. Deuteronomy 16, Exodus 12.
I'm gonna monitor on my phone because my computer.
Okay, so evidently my mic is cutting in and out, and I don't have any idea how to fix that. So if it's annoying, send me a text and we'll get a different mic, I guess.
No, it's a brand new mic.
It is, brand new mic. It's only a week old.
We can go get a hand mic.
All right, so if it keeps cutting in and out, I will go get a hand mic and we can use that. So the Passover lamb. So the Passover lamb is supposed to be a male lamb, a year old, without a blemish. And you're breaking up, Hot Babe says. Okay. So if that continues, Hot Babe, let me know. They say it's better now.
I think it deals when you turn.
Okay, so I'm not supposed to turn. And she says she can barely hear me. So we'll try that out. So if it doesn't get any better, send me another message, Hot Babe, and we'll get that worked out. It says my volume is low, which is kind of unusual for me. So you pick the lamb on the 10th day of the month. Of Nisan, which is the first month, and can hear me now, so we're doing better. And it actually says you kill it, you slaughter it between the evenings, is what the Hebrew says, so that would be twilight of the 14th day. So for 4 days, so the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, so that's 4 days though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though I counted 5. So for 4 days.
So selected in the evening.
Yeah.
10.
So for 4 days, you keep it in your house. So you can inspect it, so you can look at it, so you can make sure it doesn't have a blemish. I was just thinking about that. So like when you get a new dog and you bring a new dog home, the dog's not housebroken.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a issue.
I was kind of wondering, did they have animal depends back then?
I don't know if they had animal depends or not. But I mean, you think keeping it for 4 days That's pretty good.
It's a long time.
Yeah, that's a long time to try to keep it. And we're going to look at this later. Some have, there is some speculation where did Jesus come into Jerusalem on the 10th of Nisan, which would be the day that you pick out your lamb? Is that the day of the triumphal entry? And we'll look at that. And we know that's a question, but we'll look at that in detail in a couple of weeks about how the time frame of all that works out the best we can choose it. So for 4 days, you keep a lamb inside your house. And I would think that would be,
Challenging.
I would think it'd be challenging a little bit. I guess it would also, so when you're getting ready to slaughter it, it would also give you a time to kind of cleanse it and control what it eats for those 3 to 4 days
Well, you'd hate to have it in
before you
there.
cook it.
Well, there's two things come to mind. Mine was, one, if you separate, this is a year-old lamb, right?
Right,
You're separating it from its flock or its mom.
right,
And usually, when you take a dog away or you take an animal away from its mom, it's going to sit there and bawl or squall or whatever it is.
Yeah, you think after a year though?
It's away from its flock. It's by itself.
Yeah, well, it is by itself. It's not in the flock.
It's going to be different.
That's kind of interesting how they did that. So then you're supposed to cook it on the 14th, and you're supposed to cook it pretty much whole. It says with its head and its legs and its inward parts. And I kind of wondered about that. So I've been trying to do some research to think, okay, how did they cook a lamb with the inward parts? But most of the rabbis say that they would gut it enough to take the intestines and the stomach and the colon, take
So what are
all
the
of that out
inward
because
parts
it would
that
taint the
remain?
meat. Do what?
What are the inward parts that remain?
Well, you'd have the liver, the kidneys, the heart,
Okay.
Lungs.
the lungs, and so you would roast all of that. And I think that
That makes sense. I guess.
yeah, but I think the point of it is that you roast it whole, that it's not in pieces or
One of your
cut
notes-
up.
One of your notes said that they took the guts of it out, or the stomach, and cleaned it,
Right.
and then put it back in
Yeah.
to cook it.
Right.
So that it was cooking the whole, but just not all the,
yeah. Yeah, the stuff that's in the stomach and the
Yeah.
intestines and the colon and
Yeah.
Good
So
catch there.
so when you read it, the rabbis there's a whole section in the Mishnah about how you're supposed to cook it, and it doesn't go into a whole lot of detail. Interestingly enough, I thought it was interesting. There was one piece of wood. I forgot what it was. It was a certain kind of wood you weren't supposed to use as the spit because it had moisture in it, and they were afraid the moisture would come out of the spit and it would be like boiling it. I thought that was a little overboard. But as they cooked it, a lot of the rabbis said they would clean those parts and then they either put them back in the cavity, or a couple of rabbis said you would put them on top of the head. And I forgot which one it was. But one rabbi says, undivided or whole, so that neither the head nor thighs were cut off, and not a bone was broken, and the inward parts were roasted in the belly along with the entrails. So that was some of the most complete information that I found.
Is there anything that mentions how long you cook it for?
No, and I think the point was you just didn't go through the full butchering process. And I didn't know this, but it says not to boil it in water. And evidently, according to the rabbis that I read, roasting is a quicker way to cook it than boiling. And I guess, too, if you're packed up and ready to go, like the Exodus, it doesn't take any pans or pots or cooking utensils. You can just build a fire, make a spit, and roast it, and then you're done. You're ready to leave. So because of all of those reasons, they said you would roast it over an open fire. So one rabbi said you'd place the head and its legs and its entrails inside of it. But mostly because it was the quickest way to cook it. Y'all got any questions about that? Anything you want to say?
My translation, well, let's see where it says. It says just inner organs, so it doesn't say inner part. I don't know if that's correct or anything.
Okay.
So I guess that
It's a word
distinguishes
that,
between
yeah.
the intestines, I guess.
Yeah, it's just a word that's pretty general for anything that's on the inside.
Yeah.
So what it included and what it didn't include would be open to a little bit of interpretation. But I would think, again, the intestines and stuff would be taken out.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, too, and we're going to talk about this more in a couple of weeks. In Deuteronomy, when you get to Deuteronomy 16, instead of everybody being able to offer that sacrifice in Exodus, they were in their houses. But in Deuteronomy 16, it changes. It's supposed to be done at wherever the Lord chooses for his name to dwell. So there's some differences between the instructions in Exodus and the ones in Deuteronomy that I'm just telling you that right now as you go and look at that, because we're going to talk about that in a couple of weeks.
And this is before the bread, right? Isn't the bread like the 14th day or something?
Well,
Or I guess
you kill
still
the
eat
lamb, roast the lamb with the unleavened bread and the bitter herbs on the 14th day.
And do you continue eating the lamb or just the bread?
Well, the lamb, what is not eaten by the next day of the Passover lamb has to be burned in the fire. So you can't eat it the next section of the feast, which is the next 7 days,
Right.
which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, but you eat unleavened bread.
But there's no seasoning to the meat.
You know, I didn't read anything about how they cooked it. They just said that they cooked it, so I didn't get...
Looks like you marinated or salt, pepper.
We don't have time.
You gotta have, you gotta have something. I can understand time frame of that, but it looks like you'd season it somehow.
Yeah.
Because just
The
roasting
herbs.
meat by itself is just,
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too because, and this is not in the text, this is Jewish tradition. It said that you were supposed to eat a bite the size of an olive. And I would need a lot more than that. I mean, I'd need like a...
So you roast
a
this whole
shin bone or
lamb and you
something.
get this little tiny...
Well, you were trying to decide because remember, the lamb was supposed to be for your entire household, but if your household wasn't big enough, you went with another household.
Yeah.
And they also had laws, again, this wasn't in the text, this was in some Jewish commentary that I read. If your house was so big, your house had to cook 2 lambs, then the requirements of the first lamb didn't apply to the second lamb. You could eat it the next week, but you could eat the first one the next week. That's not in the Bible. So I just thought it was interesting when you start reading through all of that.
well, how can you have your first lamb? You can't have a second lamb. I mean, so the second lamb would have been the second?
I guess. I mean, I was just trying to think if you had a family that was that big. I mean, that'd be a pretty big family.
Yeah, especially if you're only eating an olive
Yeah.
size.
Yeah. So again, none of that's in the text. That was just some Jewish tradition stuff that I read from the Mishnah. But I think it is important that we talk about the parallels between the Passover lamb and Jesus, because there are a lot of similarities between those. I wrote some of those down so we could talk about them. I was thinking about, evidently, the days that the lamb is in the house, those 4 days, it gives you an opportunity to inspect it to make sure that it's really pure, that it doesn't have any kind of blemish or anything on it. And so if you think about that Passion Week of Jesus, he was really, that whole time, that week he was getting tested and questioned about his teaching and about who he was and about other things. That's where, and I thought it was interesting as a parallel, you're supposed to cleanse, this goes back to last week, you're supposed to cleanse your house and take out all the leaven. Mm-hmm. Jesus came in and cleansed the temple at the first of that week. And I thought that's a really interesting parallel. And then, he started getting the questions, by what authority do you do those? It's when he talked about John the Baptist. And it's when he got the question about should you pay taxes to Caesar? And then they tested him by asking which one is the greatest commandment. And they came and asked him the question about the resurrection. Had the lady, she was married to a guy and he died, so she married the brother and he died and the brother. And so there were 7 brothers. When the resurrection comes, whose wife will she be? But all of those questions are happening in that Passion Week, kind of in that period of time where, you'd be you'd be checking your Passover lamb to make sure that it's really without blemish, and they were testing Jesus over and over before they took him out on Passover and killed him, just like they would have done a Passover lamb. I just think that's a really interesting parallel in that.
Yeah, I never really thought about that. That's kind of interesting. So they're basically testing Jesus, seeing if he had any blemish that whole week.
I mean, I think there's a really close parallel to that. I mean, that's the way I take it. That's the way I read that. That's the way I see it. And then it's interesting because at the end of that, you know, so you're getting ready to offer your Passover lamb because you found out that it's without blemish. It's Pilate who says that he finds no fault in Jesus. So the one that you wouldn't expect to pronounce him clean or without blemish is the one who does, and the Jewish leaders who should have done that find him full of fault, even though he didn't have any fault and he didn't have any sin.
It's kind of crazy when you think about that week. Like, none of that was like turning in their head, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it should have
Realizing
been.
what they're doing with this lamb and what they're doing with
Has there ever
Jesus.
been a time frame from when he was arrested in Gethsemane to the time that he was on the cross? How long was he in the testing phase as far as the
trial?
trial?
It was, it's really interesting. We should do a class on that. It's, first they try him at night, which according to Jewish law, you weren't supposed to do that. So they actually broke the law to try Jesus. So they tried him at night, then they sent him to Pilate. He sent him back, then they sent him back again. So all of that happened within the span from the time he was arrested in Gethsemane by maybe the mid part of the next day or the early part of the next day, because it was a very short, from Gethsemane to death is only about a 24-hour period.
Well, when you said the 4 days and the test period, that's what went
Yeah.
in my mind was, okay, was that the time that they actually brought him before the Sanhedrin and then the Pilate, you know, because they went here and then they had to take him somewhere else.
Yeah.
So what was that time span there? I've never-
That time span was about a 24-hour period,
Okay.
maybe a little bit less. The testing period where they were asking all of that questions was from the triumphal entry to his arrest, which would have been a 4-day period. So just like they were keeping a lamb for 4 days, he would have been tested for those 4 days. I just thought that was interesting.
I've
but-
always tried to figure out, because when you, back to the Passover, when you bring in your lamb, you bring yours in, I bring mine in, Jeff brings his in for each of our families. We don't do the killing or the slaughtering, that's the priest. And we're all coming there on Passover day. That's a lot of killing and a lot of cooking done at the same time.
Yeah,
How was that physically feasible, possible?
they would have, every priest would serve. So on special, there were special days like Passover where the priest did not serve by division. Every priest served those days. So they say on those days, I mean, they were set up to kill that many lambs, and they said that you know, the blood would just be running everywhere. And so they would be killing that many lambs, and they said like sometimes they were in kind of an oven type, and sometimes just over a roasted fire, but sometimes it was an oven type of fire. And they said that, they can't hear you, by the way, you have to speak up.
Okay.
So,
Normally, I've heard that for years.
yeah, so,
Robert Lee haunting me.
So they would say that like every oven in Jerusalem would be full, and they would even like build some temporary type ovens where, I mean, when you think about the magnitude of how
Yeah.
many lambs you're killing and how many lambs you're roasting and the people, because one of the things in Deuteronomy is where in Exodus everybody did it at their home, when you get to Deuteronomy 16, it's only supposed to be done in the place that God chooses for his name to dwell. So everybody went to Jerusalem. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, we think about Jesus going to Jerusalem when he was 12, but he would have gone every Passover.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's just not recorded in the text that he went every Passover. So when you see that, I mean, that's a huge number of, and they had, and again, this is not text, this is just stuff I've read through the years. They had certain lambs in certain areas outside Jerusalem where they would raise lambs just for this particular purpose. And so when you came to Jerusalem, you might, if you were traveling a long way, you might not bring your lamb. What you would do is when you got to Jerusalem, you would bring money and you would buy a lamb from where the priest would raise lambs so that you would have one for the sacrifice. You might not take it from your home, just might bring the money for it.
And then you got all these lambs in an oven or where they're roasting.
Right.
And you got to keep yours separated from mine so that I get my meat back and you get your meat
Right.
back. Yeah, I'm just thinking it's a logistical nightmare.
It does. And this is, I mean, this is way off, but I've wondered if it smells like, have you ever been to like a barbecue cook-off and everybody's cooking barbecue? I wonder if it smelled like that kind of aroma.
The whole city.
I could understand it if there was spices and something put on the meat.
There would
Now,
be no
there could have
aroma.
been. I don't know how they cooked it. I mean, I didn't really read any, I mean, I know they do now, but I never really read any instructions about how they would
But they don't,
do that.
as they celebrate the Passover now, they're not slaughtering lambs.
No.
Yeah. That's-
And we're going to talk about that too, but that's a couple of weeks.
Okay,
That's,
'cause-
Getting
when
ahead.
I'm sorry.
no, that's great. But in a couple of weeks, we're going to show like a contemporary Seder plate and each one of the things that's on it now and how it developed and what each one of those represents. But tonight we're just supposed to be talking about the lamb.
Good. I know there's some groups today that would not go well to have lamb sacrifices.
No, I'm sure that there's not. And the other thing that's interesting in the text, and this is John tells us this, that when they came to the body of Jesus, and they found that they broke the legs of the other two men who were crucified, but when they came to Jesus and saw that he was already dead, they didn't break his legs. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things about the Passover lamb, is the instruction for the Passover lamb was that no bone, when you slaughter and sacrifice your lamb, no bone of the lamb is supposed to be broken. So for Jesus, not one of his bones will be broken. So he pierced his side instead of breaking his leg, so that not any bone was broken. So again, another reflection of how, I think even in the very beginning, God was laying that type of the Passover lamb out to find its fulfillment in Jesus.
That's always been a thought or question, because when the spikes went in his hand to hold him up there, and to be able to do that without breaking a bone in the hand
Yeah,
was be difficult.
yeah, I would think so. A lot of times they would put it through
Yes, we say-
through here.
I've seen, instead of in the hand, it was in the wrist between
Yeah.
the bones here, which makes more sense.
Because it would support more weight as well.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, just some cool stuff about the Passover lamb. Just make sure that we kind of make that connection back to Jesus.
That seems like it'd be difficult to not break any bones, like getting the intestines and stuff out.
No, you just split right here.
You go right below.
Yeah.
Hog killing, I know all about that part of it.
Well, they weren't sacrificed any hogs.
No, I know, but you still
You don't
gut an
break
animal
the
the
chest
same.
cavity though?
No,
No, if you
you don't
start
have
cutting
to.
just right
You don't
below
have
that.
to.
Yeah.
You do that when you want ribs or
Right.
things of that nature, when you block it out.
But you would just think, I mean, just the symbolism of that, and they say the Kidron Valley would run red with blood when they would sacrifice all those lambs because there was so much blood that was being poured out.
No, because I've talked about the hog slaughter, and it brought back memories, because they're doing the lamb, it's whole.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still got its hair on
Yeah.
it. You don't shave it before you do it.
No.
Burnt hair stinks.
So it would not smell, it would not be a good aroma then.
At
Well,
one
it-
point, when it starts, it's, no.
You would, and even researching that, and I wish I had some more definitive answers for that kind of stuff, but I would just read different rabbis who had commentary on that, and some would say, yeah, you skin it first, and some would say, well, no, you don't skin it first, and there didn't seem to be a consensus. The text just says that it's supposed to be whole. It doesn't say anything about the hide. It's still supposed to have its head. So its head, its legs, and its inward parts. So it's seen as a whole lamb. I don't know if I tried to look to see, did they skin it, take the hide off of it? I couldn't find. I mean, the text doesn't say, so I don't know if that means that it was open to interpretation, or if there was just an understanding that us being so many thousands of years removed, we just don't have quite the cultural understanding that they would have about exactly how they did that.
Yeah, Buddy and Linda asked, was the blood drained?
Yes.
Just when it was slaughtered. I mean, I think the point was that it wasn't like a normal kind of dressing kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, it was not the blood. Remember, the blood as it was slaughtered, some of the blood was thrown against the altar as well. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the blood obviously drained out of it when they killed it. But when you think about how we process meat now, you kill it, you hang it, and let the blood drain out. Not like that, because they killed it and then they cooked it
Immediately.
And
yeah.
that was part of the thing about roasting. And again, this is not in the text, but some of the rabbis were talking about the reason that you roasted it was the way that it cooked the blood out of it. So, but again, I don't have any kind of definitive answers
Right.
on that, just stuff that I had read. Because it says, said the blood was supposed to be sprinkled upon the altar as sacrificial blood. So, yeah, I mean, in Exodus they did. In Exodus they spread it on the doorpost, but later it's sprinkled on the altar. Remember, on the first,
Right.
you put it on the doorpost so that the death angel will pass you by.
But when you have to go to Jerusalem, you can't do that, I guess.
Yeah.
So it changed.
And so it seems like some of that tradition changed between the time that they're wandering in the wilderness and then when you get the instructions in Deuteronomy, we'll talk about in a couple of weeks. Those instructions when they're getting ready to go into the land of Canaan are a little different because there's going to be a specific place. And while you're in the wilderness, of course, you have the tabernacle that's traveling with you. So you would have that place where God's name dwells because they have the tabernacle. All really interesting stuff. I mean, when you think about that, the symbolism, that would be a huge reminder every year of what God had done when He delivered you. And I know we have communion every week, which is also a reminder of the Passover lamb and what Jesus has done for us. But I just think it's a really cool reminder. Somebody asked me one time, is it okay to take Passover? And I was like, I think it's fine. You can't make it a requirement for everybody else to do, but if you chose to do it, I don't think there'd be anything wrong with that. Paul did, so he's a pretty good example. All right, so you got any questions about Passover lambs? Jeff Butler's watching, but he didn't give me a question. Breaking up, you're loud and clear on YouTube. Can't hear Reggie, but none of those are questions. All right, but thank you for throwing us some information, Charles Moffitt.
We need to hear Reggie, though. He's going to be interviewed.
Yeah, Reggie's our interview guest tonight. So we have to ask you the same kind of questions we've been asking everybody else. And I didn't write them down, so I'm expecting Jeff is going to help me remember these.
From my understanding, we were supposed to get these questions before we got here so we would know what our questions were going to be.
Oh, well, if you'd been listening, you would have already known, right? I told you in the elders meeting what kind of questions there were going to be. So first question we always ask is, what is your favorite book of the Bible?
That's not the first one.
That wasn't the first one we've been asking?
No.
What was the first one?
How we got here?
Yeah, how you got to Clarksville Highway.
Okay, I thought that was the second one. I thought we started out with a real easy favorite book of the Bible.
Well,
you can answer either one of those.
Again, I guess it's time of years, different times of your life, different scriptures or different books mean more. And Job was mine
Okay.
because of things that was going on at the times, and you're trying to figure out why things happen, and you start questioning who God is and why, I've been doing what I've been doing, and things aren't going the way you think you're going to go. And you go through it, and it's always fascinated me because you go through Job and you listen to the family and your friends and everybody questioning you and saying all the stuff that you've done wrong or you need to curse God and change, and then you get to the end of it and Job finally gets break down and says, why? And God says, and who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you to question me
Right.
about what goes on? I know more than you do. I went, okay. Yep.
Fair
I don't
enough.
question no more.
All right. So is that still your favorite book? Or is that kind of changed through the years?
Well, when I had the kids at the house, it was, the phrase was, for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And that was in my house, on my beam at one time. I don't know where that got off to when we moved, but that's still my phrase. But I still go back to Job
Okay.
because of, I guess, that and Jonah when he comes out. I didn't want to go there because I knew what you do. I knew you were forgiving God.
I'm gonna go pout because you saved all these people.
Yeah, I don't want you to save these people.
Yeah. But he went.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you get to Clarksville Highway?
Born.
So now, were Mr. Joe and Miss Peggy going here when you were born?
I believe so.
What year was that?
I was
When were
born
you
in 1960.
So the first
first-
service,
61.
I think if I remember right, it was the third Sunday of March in '61. If I read, I was not here, by the way. I read that in a book. That's in my office. But so
I've always known how old the church is because I'm as old as the church.
you're as old as the church. So they started coming here right after it started.
Yes.
Okay. For some reason, I was thinking it was several years after that before they started attending here.
I'd had to ask Mom for that, but Travis, do you remember?
I was too young too, so I don't know.
So
Okay.
Travis says he,
First church I ever remember coming to, I'll just put it that way.
Okay. So you've been, basically as long as you can remember going to church, you've been coming to this church.
yes. Well, it was back there.
Yeah.
That
I wasn't here when it was back there.
Yeah, this church, they broke ground on this building in 1976. Because there's a picture of me at groundbreaking. Our minister at the time was Mr. Cooper, Sandy Cooper.
I've heard of him.
Yep.
I've heard stories.
He was an Irishman. Evidently, my mic is not good enough.
No, Greg's is cut back off again. I'm picking him up through yours.
Oh, okay.
So it's really good then.
Okay, so that's just kind of weird. That's a new mic. We're gonna have to test it out. You remember Lester Roadhog Moran and the Cadillac Cowboys?
Stepped in what?
Test. All right. Okay.
No. But it was, Brother Cooper was he was a different character for a young guy trying to hear someone who had an Irish brogue. It was fun trying to pick up and stay. My granddaughter's going to a different church, and she says she's too old now to go to children's church. So she says being in the services is kind of boring. She doesn't understand what all was going on. And I'm thinking, yeah, when you're 12 and 13 and you're trying to listen to an Irishman speak,
That even
you want to talk
complicates
about
it even
boring.
more. Yeah.
Kind of messed me up. I was watching the screen and Travis was walking up handing me a mic. Like,
Is it turned on?
yes, it is turned on.
Is it on mute?
This one doesn't have a mute.
Is that the old one?
Yep.
The receiver wasn't on.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Oh, so Brother Cooper,
Yep.
so do you remember all of the ministers that were here? You can't, that's unfair to ask you to name them all.
Name them
We
all.
won't do that. We won't do
I
that.
can go through the ones that I know,
How many have there been?
a bunch.
Do we know that?
You had
That's
I
not
don't
important
know.
right now, but
Yeah, I could get close and
Brother
guess.
Braswell was one,
Right,
Brother Barnes, Brother Cooper, Brother Bunner, Lanius, then Brother Bunner again, then Johnny Harris, no, David.
David.
David was here when Frank came back. And Frank took David's place when he left. And then Johnny Harris. And then you.
And then me.
I think I got all of them that I was, as a kid, can remember. Do you know of it? Did I miss any?
There's one that was kind of tall, heavy set that went to Sandusky. I can't remember his name.
But he didn't preach here.
Yeah,
Okay.
Brother White.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I remember his name, Whited. In fact, he had, I looked at some old elders' notes one time. He and Robert Lee had the best handwriting of anybody who wrote in the elder notebook. Brother Whited and Robert Lee. They had incredible handwriting.
not me.
Me either.
Good softball player,
Donnie Barnes.
Donnie Barnes, yeah.
Right.
Donnie Barnes was a softball player. He's the one who got our church to get our first softball team together.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
And Donnie was also the one who brought elders into the church.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to ask you what you.
No, I have no idea what year that was.
All right. So what are some of the things you remember about Clarksville Highway? I mean, what really kind of stands out? Anything? It's kind of an unfair question, but it's all right for me to ask it.
I don't know. I mean, it was always, food was the main thing because it's changed because usually on a Sunday night after services, we went to somebody's house to have a little food, drink. Play games, play cards, or the kids. The same families we went to the Ellis's, or to the Chamblises, and we'd spend a little time after church together and eat after church because church was at 6 o'clock. So we would eat after the church.
Okay. So you built this building in 70.
It was ground broke in 79.
Okay, how about the addition? How about where the classrooms and the kitchen are? Do you remember when that was built?
Now, after 83, because Jackie and I were married.
I know it was by 95 because when I came over here, I visited, when I was preaching at Cheap Hill, I came over here one day to visit David and he was showing me the building. And I didn't think it was very old at that time, but I don't know how old not very old is.
But the members built the church. Because at the time we built the church, we had somebody who laid, Johnny Harris was a block layer, so he laid all the block. And Mr. Carl was a carpenter, and Mr. Robert was a steel guy with the cranes, and Dennis Adcock was in heat and air. Dad was an electrician. I think the only thing they paid somebody to do was insulate and do drywall. No, actually, we had
Wow.
readers did the drywall work.
James Atkins for the foundation.
Yeah, James Atkins poured the foundation, and
I think we got somebody to lay the brick.
I think we did a commercial company to lay the brick because it's, big building's hard to do.
That's still pretty impressive. to
Yeah. I
Have
mean,
all
I don't
those
think
people
we-
in your church.
I don't know that we could do that now. We still have electricians and heat and air people.
Yeah, that's about it.
But that's at me,
Well, Dennis James does siding.
yeah. If we had it with siding,
Yeah.
Dennis could do siding on the building. But it would be hard for us to do that now because, I mean, I don't know that we would have the skilled labor to do that. I can go get milkshakes.
Oh, no, I think Charlie Yerta can do about anything.
Yeah, Charlie can.
Well, Charlie and Stevie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's,
you might be
there's
able
a
to
few
still.
there's a few of us, but no, not to do what we did here, no. Because we all got here and I remember putting the decking down, flooring down on the trusses. I remember Travis arguing with James Atkins about the trusses because you got an engineer and a construction guy because their engineered trusses are designed to be so close to the edge. And you can't be off these sections, and we were about a quarter of an inch or half inch off. And we got to get this moved over. And James was telling Travis, no, it'll stay, don't worry about it. Yeah, Tommy Hudgens did our plumbing. I forgot about
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had it pretty much all covered.
It's pretty cool.
What else do we ask? Do you remember?
I'm trying to remember.
Oh, do you have any spiritual habits that you would pass on to other people? Any good advice? Wasn't that one of the questions we
Yeah.
had?
I loved getting to my office first thing in the morning before everybody else got there. Used to be able to do it. I can't beat them there no more. But get in my office and I turn the light off, and that's when I had my prayer time and my scripture. And I miss those times. Now I'm doing it driving
Yeah.
because the office is full of people when I get there.
It's good to pray while you drive, but don't close your eyes.
Yeah. It's hard to keep focused when you're doing that, though.
Yeah,
There's
it is.
There's a lot of distractions. I don't enjoy it as much. But
I think it's important that, I mean, whenever you can find it, I'm not trying to say it needs to be early in the morning or anything like that, but I mean, I think it is important each day to find some time where you have some quietness and you can spend some time with God without interruption.
talking about memories of the church or what's going on, what I remember about church, because we used to have big get-togethers. Again, it dealt around food. We had beauty shows and oyster fries. We had family days. And it was things where we all got together as a group and did stuff outside, being inside the church building.
Mm-hmm.
And we really don't do that anymore.
No, I think we need to do those kind of things more, and I think one of the things that, one of the big negative impacts of COVID has been we don't have times that we just get together and hang out and have fellowship with each other. And I mean, if you've been here a long time, you may not recognize that as much, but if you're new and you don't really know anybody yet, we don't really have any times that you can really just get to know people. I mean, we need to really work on those times.
I think Travis and Dwayne didn't y'all go deep sea fishing? Didn't they have a deep sea fishing trip?
There were several men of the congregation that went on the bus, yeah, but it was a little bit of everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be okay with a deep sea fishing trip. You want to
Yeah,
put that together?
That sounds fun.
I threw up the whole time.
Yeah, after his story, I never wanted to go
Oh.
deep sea fishing.
Yeah. All right. So what other kind of questions do we need to ask Reggie? See if
what's
I
the
have
other
any,
one?
you have any questions on your,
I do not have any. I have one for myself, I guess. But what's your favorite part about serving at Clarksville Highway as an elder, I guess? Or the most challenging?
Most challenging for me is to step back. I tend to take things and go with it as opposed to mentoring someone to take that spot.
Yeah.
That's something I do in business myself. I'm learning the last 4 years of stepping back and saying, okay, I can't tell you to do this no more. You got to do it. And mentoring somebody to take that spot. Working on that. But as far as, yeah, bringing somebody alongside and saying, hey, this is what we do. Because I'm one who just, I love being in the background and doing things as opposed to being out front and doing things.
Right.
I'm not one who stands around in crowds and talks. I'm one who, in the corner, doing something. I'm not a socialite.
Charlie Moffitt said the addition was complete by 1988 because that's when he came and it was already there.
There you go.
I know it was after we got married because Jackie was in part of painting the hallways. I had my chop saw out there chopping. I was the lumber. I was the saw guy. I stood out in the parking lot with a saw cutting everything.
Okay. So what's your least favorite part of serving at Clarksville Highway? And you may not have one, it's
I
okay.
don't-
No, we all had one.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna feel bad.
I don't feel bad about my least favorite one.
I guess it goes back to me not training someone to take my spot
Yeah.
and not being a socialite, getting out of my shell and pushing myself to get out and talk to more people that I don't tend to do. I will once I know folks a little bit, but otherwise I'm not one to walk up to the, and Charlie, forgive me, I'm not one who walks up to the visitors who walk in the back door. If I'm not the first one to walk up to, hey, I'm glad to hear. It's bad on my part.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes we have to push ourselves out of those
That's
comfort
my least
zones.
favorite part is
Yeah.
meeting
And-
new people.
Yeah, and it's just different personalities because, I mean, for me, that just comes natural. But then you have a lot of other talents that are not natural to me that, and that's why it takes a lot of people with a lot of different talents to make up the church. And it's why it takes, not everybody can be an eye or an arm or, we have to have different parts that we serve and different ways that we mesh together to make a body.
Now, I've filled a lot of shoes. Song leader for a long time.
Yeah.
I was a song leader in youth, worked with the youth for several years. Don't know my time framing. And then was actually song leader working with the youth and an elder. That was fun.
Yeah. That's a lot of hats to wear at one time.
And also have a full-time job somewhere else.
Yes.
Because that's a full-time job right
Still run a
there.
heat and air business.
So your spiritual journey story is, you always had a mom and dad who took you to church and
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it wasn't a question of getting up and are we going to church? We're going to church. If the doors were open, we were here. If there was a get together, we were here. There wasn't no basketball, baseball practices, baseball games. You're at church.
did you ever get left here?
Did I get left here?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. I just wondered if like Mr. Joe came in one car, Miss Peggy came in another, and they got home and thought,
No.
I wonder where Reggie is.
No.
Or-
Now, Mama got left quite often.
Oh, did she?
Yeah. Because I would drive and Dad would drive. Or Mom and Dad would drive. And Dad was never one who sit around and talked a whole lot after church. He got in the car and left. And then I would talk to the teens and do whatever, and when I would leave, I'd walk in the house, and Dad said, "Where's your mom?" I said, "I don't know, she rode with you."
What you should have said, Travis is getting her, Dad.
But
Travis,
guess who had to go pick her up?
you should have sent Travis to pick her up.
No. That was when he was in school.
Okay. That's funny.
But I'm the one who left her, so I'm the one who had to go back and pick her up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. That's good stuff. I'm looking to see if I have any questions. No questions there.
Got to tell one funny story for Charles,
All right.
because I think the hardest I've ever laughed in this church was at Charles
Charles Moffitt. I'd like to hear this story.
I was leading singing. I sat down in the front row of course, we all kind of have our own areas, and we still do. You walk into church, you want to see where a family is here, you look in the corner. Okay, they're here. I sit about 3 rows back and sit on the outside seat, and Jackie sat beside me. Right behind me was Charlie and Vicky. Well, Charlie got up to lead prayer. I sit down. I got up to start the next song. Charlie walked back and was sitting down, and as soon as his bottom hit the seat, he jumped straight up because he was looking down and he saw my wife's feet and knew he wasn't sitting with his wife.
Oh,
And I happened to see the face, the whole looks, and I just lost it. I had to stop and say, okay, fellas, I explained to the church what he just did.
yeah. It's amazing sometimes, like if you're leading singing or you're preaching, it's amazing all the things that you see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing, man. It's amazing when we used to, the song leader, you weren't pre-planned to lead sing or to lead prayers.
Right.
So it was up to the song leader to choose someone to lead opening prayer and closing prayer. And to watch heads drop when you know I'm
about
fixing
to
to call on somebody, I'm fixing to ask on somebody, and watch men's heads drop down. It's like, you can't get my eyeball.
Yeah. You can't make eye contact.
You can't make
call
eye
them.
contact with me, so you're not going to call on me.
Yeah, when I was younger, I might have done that a time or two myself.
That still happens in youth class when you ask them to say a prayer or something.
I don't remember, I don't remember Exchange Street where I grew up being like that. I think it was pretty well planned out. I mean, you pretty much knew if you were supposed to do something when you got there that Sunday. I mean, it was pretty well planned.
It wasn't until the last, probably since you've been here, maybe a little bit before, they started putting out a to-do list. Because you always had the wait on the Lord's table was a list that everybody knew about. Because if your name was on the list, when you were the kid, you came with your Sunday clothes on. You had to have a suit and tie on to wait on the Lord's table.
Yeah. I remember when I first came here, they had the little board in the back, and everybody walked to the back, and they'd assign them where they were supposed to stand.
Yes.
So,
Well, it's still in there.
yeah, the board's still in there, but now we just have it at the back, and you pick it up when you come in. All right, so I don't have any other questions. Do you have any other questions, Jeff?
I don't think so.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Next week is Shaw Fulton. But thanks for tuning in. And next week, the lesson is about the different cups at Passover. And the Bible doesn't spell them out. We know there was more than one when Jesus partook of the Passover with the disciples. So we're just going to look at it kind of from a traditional aspect and talk about the 4 cups and sometimes 5 and what they represented. So tune in next week for that, and I'll try to get my microphone fixed so that you can hear better. No question here. Check questions, Jeff. Make sure we don't have another question.
No questions.
No question there. So, hey, have a good evening, and we will see you next week. Don't forget to tune in Sunday morning, 9 o'clock Bible class, 10 o'clock for the sermon, and Houston and I are flipping roles this week. He's going to preach, and I'm going to lead singing. So tune in Sunday morning.
All right.
Bye.